Hey everybody, Josh Hannabury here
And Avery Hannabury.
with the Truck Focus podcast. First off, hope you're having a really good day. Super excited for today's episode as we have a really close family friend of ours, Joel Helland, who's an occupational therapist, join the podcast.
Yeah, it's crazy. My Uncle Joel is helping save so many lives.
Yeah, it's awesome. So let's get to it. Good day, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Truck Focus podcast. I'm super excited for today as we actually have Avery and I here. Joining us is one of my best friends. He's been a centerpiece in my life for a really, really long time, which is super exciting. So his name's Joel Helland. And yeah, it's just a big honor. So Joel's been one of my closest friends since basically high school. And he's been super influential in my life as a person, in Avery's life as my son, but just all in all. So really excited for this. Joel is an occupational therapist, and he currently resides in northern BC. He's just having an incredible impact in his sphere up there. It's really nice to hear just different stories that he shares, but he's also soon relocating with his family to Vancouver Island. So Joel, thank you so much for being here.
Stoked to
Yeah,
be here,
welcome to the
guys.
welcome to the Truck Focus podcast, Uncle Joel. This is a really cool experience for all of us, and we are super excited that you're here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. It's going to be fun. Looking forward to this.
Absolutely. Yeah, and without stealing too much thunder, I could brag about you for a very long time. It's just nice to have you here. So you kind of want to just describe who is Joel? Who's Mr. Joel Helland?
Well, Mr. Joel Helland. So for everyone who doesn't know me out there, who's listening, so as Josh mentioned, I am an occupational therapist, and currently I'm living in Prince George up in northern BC. For those of you down in the south, there is more to our province that exists past, Kamloops and Hope and stuff. There's a lot of land up here in the north. So we are living in northern BC, and I'm an occupational therapist. So what I do for work is I work in a few different settings, one being the hospital. So I work in acute care, and I help people get set up with wheelchairs. I work with old people, adults, in the physical and also the mental capacity. So we're looking at what do they essentially need to be able to do to be able to go home. So we're doing cognitive assessments, looking at how people's minds are functioning, looking at their safety to be able to go home and do their different activities. And the goal in the hospital, really, I would say for the most part, is trying to get people out. So that comes with a lot of complexities. So I work there a little bit, but I would say the majority of the work that I actually do is through private practice. So I work through WorkSafe BC. I'd say I get about 90% of my referrals from WorkSafe. And I work with injured workers that have either been in some kind of an accident. So now they have a physical injury. It might be anything from, a back injury to a hand injury to a neck injury, and also working with people who have been through trauma in the workplace too. So do a lot of work in the mental health capacity where people have been through a traumatic experience at work, and now they're very worried to go back into different places, whether it's work related or in the community. And my job is to try and help people get back to work. And I've worked with lots of different types of people all over northern BC, from like Prince Rupert to as far north as Fort Nelson. If you guys don't know where that is, you'll have to Google Maps it, all the way out to like McBride and Valemont down to 100 miles. So we cover quite a big area. And essentially what an occupational therapist does, if I were to summarize all of that, is we're looking at what sorts of things are getting in the way or interfering with someone being able to do their day-to-day activities. So I like to encourage people to think about what they do throughout the day from morning until evening. Okay, so you're thinking about what actually fills my day. What do I do? And then taking a closer look at what would happen now if I was really depressed or really anxious or worried about something, and that was getting in the way of all those different activities that I have to do. Or maybe it's a back injury, like I said earlier, and maybe you can't sit for a very long time. So truckers sit, right? That's a big part of their job. So sometimes there's ways of adapting the activity or prescribing equipment, different things that can help that person be able to do their day-to-day activities. If it's more of a mental health type thing, it's more so skills that people need to develop to manage these different symptoms that start to come up when you're starting to feel really anxious or really depressed. So we're working with people through that lens. We're always thinking about what are their activities, what do they need to be able to do, and we're trying to help them be more successful with that. The other job that I do, I won't get too much into it, but I also do complex and custom wheelchair seating for people with severe developmental disabilities. So all of my clients, for the most part, do not walk, and they have bodies that are deformed in different ways. And the off-the-shelf or commercial products don't fit them. So we have to go the custom route. So we're making backrests and cushions and different things that are contoured to their body because they spend so much time in their wheelchairs. So it's very, very interesting and very challenging work. So I hope that answers your questions. I feel like my role in the North is very broad. It's very general. So sometimes it's a little bit hard for people to grasp exactly what an OT does. But there's other people that work in a little bit more specific settings, like working with people that have had a brain injury or a stroke, and you're working in a very specific setting with a specific population of people, and you're doing a lot of the same things over and over again. But because the North is so desperate for occupational therapists, part of our job is to be a generalist. So we have to develop a lot of different kinds of skills to be able to do the different types of jobs. So yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you highlighted a few things, I think I don't want to take away from your description, but more so you as a person.
Yeah.
And I remember for a very, very long time now, there's a couple of things. So you're probably, from a professional and a personal standpoint, you're very relatable. You build trust really fast, and you're always known as, like, without being cheesy, the nice guy. And I think those are the traits that I honored you with through high school and through afterwards when you helped me out a lot of times. So hearing a lot of what you like, we obviously have tons of conversations, but that was a really clear explanation of where you're impacting people's lives. And it really does. It's nice to hear people living in their truth, essentially, where you as a person, I can tell just from knowing you for so long, those are your natural strengths. And obviously there's education, there's training, there's experience, there's failing and getting back up and all that. But it's, that just was really repetitive, where I'm like, man, that really highlights Joel too. So I thought that was really neat. So with that, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, there's soft skills and there's hard skills, right? I think the hard skills are the things that you can learn through a textbook or doing something over and over again. So I'll give you an example of that. Is, let's say we're talking a wheelchair. Okay, there's a lot of different things you have to think about when someone's getting a new wheelchair. Where are they going to use it? Are they using it on their own, or is someone pushing it in them or pushing them in it? Where are they using it? All these different things you have to think about, and you can learn that over time, but it's not something that you're born with. You're not born with learning how to prescribe a wheelchair to someone, or learning how to help someone with their anxiety or their depression. But there's soft skills that I feel like people are more so not, I wouldn't say born with, but they develop them over time, but it's more part of their personality, right? Like,
Yeah.
let's say building rapport, building trust with someone. You can read all you want through textbooks and research and literature, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, if you naturally don't know how to build rapport and trust with someone, it's pretty hard to do that because people pick up on that. Like people pick up when you're not genuine and you don't have their best interest in mind. So I feel like when I'm doing my job as an OT, I'm able to use those God-given abilities that I feel like I'm born with. It's not something that I have to read and learn about. It's just something that comes out naturally to me. And then people pick up on that and they feel like you're helping them because they feel like you have their best interest in mind. It's not something that you read and recited and memorized from a textbook, because that's not going to apply in all different settings, right? So
Yeah, no, that's fair, and it's true. And you see that, I think, in all sorts of walks of life. And I'm often encouraged when I see people that in our space, just in transportation, where I think tyranny is a mindset that people often kind of rely on. That's their safe zone. But it's like, no, let's be empathetic and let's treat people as people. And then you can, build trust, build some form of a relationship, have a good conversation to problem solve versus just, I am telling you to do. So that's good. Avery, did you want to kind of highlight on a couple things, buddy?
Yeah, so Uncle Joel, in your career thus far, what has been the most rewarding experience you have had to date?
Most rewarding experience. Oh man, that's a tricky one. A couple things stand out to me. I think when I see someone get back to work, that is really rewarding for me because I feel like someone is getting a big part of their life back, right? And Avery, you could think about that as school. So if you were injured and you couldn't go to school anymore, that's a big part of your day, man. That's like at least 50% of the day. And if you were in the hospital for that, or you had to leave school because you were injured for some reason, but then you go through the rehab process, which would be, like, let's say you broke your leg, okay? And then you got a cast, you got some crutches, and then you got the cast off, you started walking again, you returned to school, and you can go back and take part in PE, play basketball, etc. You're getting a big part of your life back. And it's really exciting to see people get that part of the life back because things just kind of fall apart because you don't have that structure and that routine in your day. So you're used to getting up, getting dressed, whatever, having a shower, having breakfast, getting out the door, your parents drive you to school, same time every day. When you don't do that, that routine falls apart and then your day gets all mumble jumbled, right? And then and then it starts to affect your mood because you're used to doing all these things that you enjoy and now you can't because you got this broken leg, right? So when people get back to work, it's really rewarding, I would say. And I'll give you an example of that. It's actually in a mental health aspect, but just recently, I said goodbye to one of my clients who I worked with for about a year. He's a paramedic and experienced a traumatic event in the workplace. Something really horrible happened that caused him to have to leave work. I worked with him for a year and not just me, but there's a counselor involved as well. Shout out to all you counselors out there. And we helped him get back to work as a paramedic again in the same job, the same city that he was working in. And it was just amazing to see him go back and so confident. And, we reflected on the different things that he learned about himself and just about life in general throughout the whole year that we were working together. and just to see people flourish along that pathway in their recovery. And it's almost like they're kind of graduating, right? Like you want to give them this like trophy or this graduation cap, because you're like, you've now got that part of your life back and you've done all that hard work to get yourself there. And they get all the credit, right? They're the ones doing all that difficult work. I'm just the one kind of helping to steer that ship a little bit and navigate those waters with them. But yeah, it's really, I would say that's one of the most rewarding things. There's other things too, but I would say that's probably the biggest thing that stands out.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. So, have you worked with any professional drivers as an OT?
I sure have, sir. I actually have one on my caseload right now, and I like talking to him. He calls me like every week. He's always looking for an update. He's like, "Hey, yeah, you heard anything?" I'm like, no, we're still waiting. I'll let you know if I hear anything. Yeah, I probably worked with, so I've been in OT for about 4 years. I've probably worked with 5 truck drivers, and I've also worked with the wife of a truck driver. I've got an interesting story about that. Yeah, this person didn't have a ride home from the hospital, and this was way down in Vancouver. And this person told me, I was doing my initial interview, my initial assessment. I said, okay, so this is happening down in Vancouver. How are you going to get back here? And she's like, oh, my husband's picking me up. I'm like, okay, what kind of vehicle do you drive? She's like, oh, it's a big rig. And I'm like, wait, you're getting surgery and then you're going to get up into a huge truck after your surgery and drive all the way from Vancouver to northern BC? I'm like, you're crazy. So what did we do? We actually practiced, because he had the big rig at their house. So we actually practiced getting in and out of it. And she had to use a step ladder to get up onto the first running board. And we talked about like where to put her hands and all this stuff.
Wow.
And she managed to do it safely and everything went well. But yeah, I have worked with truck drivers, and like I said, I do have one on my caseload right now. Yeah, very interesting group of people to work with. Really enjoy it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah, we obviously spend a lot of time advocating for professional drivers. So it's obviously nice from a professional standpoint to know there's help when something happens, or in this story just shared, if the significant other something happens where they need to just have guided help. It's really it's nice to see. I love genuine advocacy, so it's really cool. So you mentioned mental health, and we're talking about professional drivers. Have you, the question doesn't have to stay with professional drivers, but just isolation in general. Drivers can spend months at a time basically by themselves, minus at a fuel station or at a customer. How have you seen, or I guess the question is, have you seen an impact on people's mental health because of all of the isolation, driver specific or people in general that you're working with? Has that come up at all?
So isolation, are you referring to
just time alone? So drivers on
okay.
Yeah.
So I haven't worked in the mental health capacity with drivers, because with WorkSafe, the way that it goes is if you have a claim that is if you're physically injured, and with truck driving, there's a lot of risks involved, right? From chaining up to driving to falling asleep at the wheel to winter driving to all the equipment and getting in and out of the trucks and everything. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. So to date, I've only worked with drivers that have had physical injuries, and I haven't worked with anyone that's filed a mental health claim through WorkSafe. But I would have to say, with isolation, and if we're thinking about like how much time someone is spending on the road, I think personality really comes into play there, because if someone's an introvert, that might be their sweet spot.
Yes.
they might actually really thrive and enjoy time alone and being isolated. But if that's not your personality, that could be a major part of your life that's being impacted, right? So I think each person has to reflect on like what makes them tick, right? And if it's socializing, because we all are social beings, we are meant to socialize. We're not made and designed to not socialize and be by ourselves all the time.
Yeah.
We have to pay attention to that. And I think if I'm thinking about like how would I build a strategy into that, I would encourage the different truck drivers and people spending a lot of time behind the wheel to think about that boredom or loneliness or whatever it might be, spending that much time by yourself. And are you touching base with your friends and your support group? Are you calling your wife? Are you FaceTiming your kids at the end of the day? Are you getting on the radio and talking to other truckers and telling jokes and making fun of people and kind of getting some laughter and you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
there's ways around that. But I think it's personal for sure. And if I step out of that world and I think about just people in general, I think isolation isn't good for anybody. And I think we're all feeling the impacts of that and really missing that part of our life. And one thing I like to think about all these different areas of your life is something that's called a wellness wheel. I don't know in the recording if you're able to Google an image of that and put that in as I'm talking about it right now. But the wellness wheel just basically identifies all these different areas of your life that need fulfillment. So there's spiritual needs, there's financial needs, there's social needs, there's physical needs, there's educational needs, there's all these different things. And wellness is achieved when there's a balance through all of those different things. So people could reflect on, do I have a balance in these different areas of my life? Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Physical, emotional, environmental, social, occupational, spiritual, intellectual. And if not, what could I do to maybe bring a little bit more balance into all of these different areas of my life? And as you can imagine, with isolation, there's a lot of different things that are going to be impacted there. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but
yeah, it does. And I think that's something, well, again, in this space, it's not talked about enough. The question, how are you, is normally followed by, okay, good, I need you to do, instead of actually listening to, how are you? And again, that I try not just me as an individual, but collectively, our inner circle, we try really hard to advocate for asking those questions as well, and just listen, because it's funny when, like, I listen to a lot of trucking companies complain. I listen to a lot of drivers complain. And a lot of times they're complaining about different sides of the coin, but they have the solutions right there.
yeah.
And sometimes it's a customer service question. Sometimes it's just a negative culture in the workplace. And I like those tools that you mentioned too, because being proactive on your mental health is super important. And that's not my specialty at all. I think mine is just being empathetic. It's more of a, how are you doing today? And reaching out to people that make you feel a little better, or a trusted friend that you can actually say, this is my problem. What do I do? Because you're scrambling in your own head. But yeah, I appreciate you highlighting that for sure. That really did. I think it's just a really good conversation that maybe you and I will do another one and we just kind of deep dive more into mental health. But yeah, I think that was really powerful. So I appreciate it. And I did share that on the screen. So anyone that's watching, or anyone that's listening to this, make sure you watch, because I'll include the link to what I shared as well, just because, yeah, that's a really good point that I didn't think of. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, so it's a simple visual, right? But I think it's really powerful because if something is really, really lacking in someone's life, they might not even be aware of it. They might not even know, like, oh man, that's true. I don't really socialize with people. Oh, I should probably do that a bit more often. I should call that friend and touch base, right? So yeah, just a simple thing to just reflect on and think about in your own life. Is there anything that's missing from that, or is there anything that's out of balance?
Yeah. No, I think that's important. And I think that's for anyone. It doesn't have to just be a professional driver. It could be really anyone, especially, yeah, different times right now. And I like Kathy and I, like my wife, for those that don't know her, we talk about all the time, like we're doing the best we can with what we have right now because of different restrictions and limitations. But we always keep in mind, we know it's not forever. It's just a season. And we're like, I think the social factor, just the affection, a hug, a high five, like a fist bump, all of those what were norms that now you're like, yeah, I can't, like, yeah, it's impacting us all in one way or another. And I think it's just, yeah, like you said, Joel, paying attention to it and just knowing, and yeah, different things will come back, things will improve. But yeah, I appreciate that.
One other thing too, I'm going to reference another guy that you had on the podcast. He's the physiotherapist in the States doing his PhD. What's his name again?
Yeah, Mark Manera. Yeah.
Mark, yeah. What's up, Mark? Shout out, Mark. Because he tapped into, that goal setting piece, right? And it might feel intimidating to some people to think about making all these different changes in your life, but I like how he phrased it, where it doesn't have to be all those aspects of your life that need to change right away. And I think there's a lot of pressure on people in our society where they feel like they've got to get their crap together. And that's not how it is. I liked how Mark talked about that, where even if it's being 1% better than you were the day before, or just making those small, tiny changes in your life that you're noticing are lacking, and just going back to that example of isolation, maybe it's you've been thinking about calling a friend for a really long time, and maybe it's just calling that one person, just setting a little goal in your mind and making it specific and saying, this Thursday at 2 p.m. I'm going to call John. I'm going to see how John is doing. And it can be as simple as that, right? Just choosing one little area of your life that maybe needs a little bit more loving, and making a small goal and just doing a little bit at a time. And it builds that confidence, and makes you feel good about yourself when you're accomplishing goals. So
yeah,
totally agree, man. Totally agree. I appreciate that. Thank you.
So, Uncle Joel, as you continue to advocate and build your legacy as an OT, what do you want people to remember you for most of what you do?
Wow, you guys got some difficult questions. Jeez. You stay up all night thinking these, or what?
Look at the bags under my eyes. I don't sleep.
That's why you're drinking coffee. Okay, legacy. I just want people to remember me as being someone that helped make a change in their life. And whether people learn 100 things from me or one thing from me, I just want to be remembered by someone that helped them make a change and helped them get a piece of their life back that was missing. Because I always have to stop and think that I work with people who have problems. So anyone who doesn't have a problem, I will never come in contact with, right? So every single person that I work with has some sort of problem, whether that's an emotional, physical, social, mental health problem. I'm always helping that person get a part of their life back. And yeah, I would just want to be remembered for that. I would say helping them, advocating for them, listening to them, and helping them get a big piece of their life back. Yeah, I can't really ask for much more than that. I mean, that's my job, really, right? It's a job in rehabilitation. So rehabilitation is restoring something to how it was before something happened. So you have your life, then you're injured, and then we're trying to get as much of that life back as before the injury as possible. And again, right, I don't want to just talk about the physical injuries because a lot of people just relate injuries to that. But I really want to highlight the mental health aspect, because I think in our world, in our society today, there's a lot more spotlight on that these days. And in the past, we've had kind of a dark history in that area. And we still have a long way to go, I think. I think there's still a lot of stigma around mental health, but I just want to remember that when we're talking about getting someone's life back, it's also from that mental health aspect, because, and I'm kind of going on a rabbit trail here, Avery, from your initial question, but you can't really separate a physical injury and a mental health injury, or how it influences mental health, right? Because like I said earlier with that example about breaking your leg and now you can't play basketball.
Yeah.
Do you think that's going to affect you emotionally at all? Do you think it's going to impact your mood? You're going to be bummed, man. You can't slam dunk no more. That's no bueno. So you can't isolate one thing. So I want to remember that there's always that mental health component, even though there might be a physical injury. And that totally just goes off topic of what your original question was, but let's summarize that and put it back in a box and tie a bow around it. And we'll say that I would like to be remembered as someone that just helps someone, listens to someone, and helps get a part of their life back that was missing, and yeah, helps them get back to their day-to-day activities. That's what OTs do. That's what we do best.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So it's interesting. So again, I love when you speak. I've said that for a long time, because I think you can help create clarity, and sometimes it's many words, sometimes it's few, but we're really vocal on building a legacy every day and being mindful of the fact, depending on your profession, where you can do that every day. And what you just highlighted on, there's the physical, but there's also the mental, and you are definitely doing that. And that also speaks to the name Pivotal. So anyone that doesn't know, not too many people I'd say know this part of my backstory, but Roger, Joel's dad, was also super influential in my, I guess, transformation. And that was a really pivotal moment in my life. And a lot of what Joel, you just described, is exactly that. It is a pivotal moment for people. And a lot of times it's just, you doing what you do so well, your eagerness to learn about people, obviously the hard skill, or I think you called it the hard skill, where like the textbook stuff, that really reflects on your legacy. And I think that's why that question is so important, is because we could talk about stuff all day long, and what does it mean if it doesn't mean anything to you? But the fact that it means so much to you as a person is the foundation of your legacy, because that's the impact you're absolutely having. And that's essentially an outsider looking in, just knowing your character, knowing your passion. And I know you can't share things through confidentiality, but I can hear it in your voice when you get excited about something like the paramedic, because that's a huge success, and that's part of your legacy, where when he's 95 or she's 95, they're really going to think, man, remember that Joel guy? Like, he was so, whatever that impact was. And I think that's just so powerful. And again, that's the sole purpose of this podcast, is to introduce experts like yourself in your space, the impact you're having to others, to make people think, wow, never thought of it that way. Or, okay, maybe I'm an employer and I don't believe in mental health, and I think someone's just being a wimp. Okay, well, mental health is real, and people go through traumatic events. They see an accident on the side of the road. Okay, that's real. and that pain, that scar, all of that's real. So again, thanks
yeah.
to professions like Joel, or professionals, I'm sorry, in the OT space, counselors, social workers. I know there's different professions, but people that really study the mind, it is real. So that part is, again, just to highlight your legacy. And I'm glad you went that way, because it's absolutely true. And it just, again, it shows where you're passionate. So I appreciate that very much. So just kind of as we come to a close, Joel, was there any final thoughts that you'd like to say today?
I don't know. I think I touched on everything that I wanted to touch on. Yeah, just I guess if I were to summarize some of the things that we talked about, you know, if you're working and you're struggling, right, you got to reach out to someone, and you got to reflect on where you're struggling, where you're challenging, or where you're being challenged. There's a lot of support out there, but people will not know if you're struggling if you don't reach out. So there's a lot of help, and there's a lot of people that are willing to help. And on top of that, you know, if you do have a work-related claim, you have the right to, you know, to file a claim. And there's people that are out there that can help get someone back to work if they're injured in some capacity. So there's lots of help. And yeah, I hate hearing that people are struggling in the workplace or in their lives, right? I speak more from the workplace setting just because I do so much work with WorkSafe that I get to see what happens out there. But yeah, reach out, and again, just try to make those small changes in your life that that you feel like, you know, are lacking, or they, you know, they're yeah, there's maybe just not a balance in your life in different ways. So just, yeah, reflecting on where those things are, where those shortfalls are, and taking those small steps to make those changes. And if you are struggling, to reach out, whether it's your employer or your friend or whoever, to help keep yourself healthy.
I appreciate that. Yeah, that's super important. That's a really good way to close. So I do appreciate that very much. Avery, was there any final thoughts that you'd like to share? Any last one question? You can get one question to ask Uncle Joel if you thought of something, or how are you feeling?
We all thank you for being on the podcast today. And this is something I've been highlighting for a very long time. Something I'd always say, it's something small. A small impact can make a big change in someone's life.
Totally. Yeah. And like you said, Josh, just to reflect your name, I do love that word too, pivotal. Like I am entering into someone's life at a very pivotal moment, because they can kind of go down this path or they can go down that path. And I'm helping them try to choose the right path so they don't end up on disability, you know, or in the system somehow. So I always have to think about that. And like you said, Avery, it can just be something so small that we don't really realize how much of an impact we can have on people. And it can be something that we say, or just kind of give them a new perspective or a new light, shed a new light on something where they go, oh, I never thought about that before. Or, you know, this new skill that they learned, that now they're doing something totally different. And that just made a huge change in that person's life. And I've seen it over and over and over again. But from my side, I'm like, I didn't even know that was going to impact that person in that way. Just that mindset shift, right? That maybe they need to think about something a little bit differently. Or maybe they need to do a task a little bit differently so it's safer.
Yes.
So yeah, it's those small changes can in the long run make a long lasting change. And then in the end, it becomes a big change, right? Because they're doing something differently and then they're getting better at it and so on and so forth. But yeah, so.
It's awesome. Well, thanks, guys. I won't lie, this has been, Joel, you've been obviously involved in conversations years ago, and I was like, I really want to speak, or I really want to do this. So the fact that we're doing this today, maybe a couple years too late, just because life had to happen. But this was awesome. And
it's fun.
Yeah, no, I agree. And just again, to highlight you as a person, if anyone at any point, just what Joel said, if you're struggling, reach out. Joel's generous enough that in the event you wanted to ask him questions directly, you can definitely reach out to myself and I'll put you in contact with him. I highly recommend you do so. It could be from basically an OT perspective to a mental health conversation, just to a good conversation. Virtual coffee. Joel's just like myself. We like coffee, so it's good. But yeah, Joel, just thank you so much for just taking the time today. Really appreciate everything that you shared. And once this is released, obviously I'll make some points. I'll share that link. And yeah, if anyone has any questions for Joel at any point, they can get in touch with me. And yeah, I'll definitely connect some dots. So thank you so much.
Totally. Yeah. Or if anyone wants me to elaborate on a particular topic, I know it's a little bit all over the map at times throughout that conversation, but if there's something that stuck out that someone wants me to elaborate on, get in touch with Josh and he can forward my email or my phone number or something like that. I'd be happy to chat. So yeah, there's help out there, guys. You just gotta seek it out sometimes. So
awesome. Yeah, man, thank you. This was great. And again, big goal just for us. Check the box. Excited for the impact this will have. So thanks again. Okay, have a great day, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, that's all for today's episode.
Yeah, thank you, Uncle Joel, for joining the podcast today. And it's just great to know that how many lives you're impacting.
That's right. So thank you, Joel. Honestly, your time, it means the world to us. It was really nice hearing just all of the different ways that you're impacting people from a mental health, physical health standpoint. And yeah, I really like the whole wellness wheel. I've included all of that information into the show notes as well as into the blog. And again, just thank you so much, Joel, for coming on. To all of our dedicated listeners, thank you so much. Avery and I really appreciate just the constant support, constant feedback, and it's been really encouraging. We're super excited just to continue to bring high-level experts that are having a pivotal change in the industry and in the lives of others. So as we just continue to grow the podcast, we just wanted to continue to say thank you. So if you're watching this on YouTube, I ask that you just hit the subscription button so you're subscribed. If you're listening to this on any other platform, I ask that you do the same thing. Subscribe, like, share, follow us on social media, because the greater the following, the greater the impact. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Bye.
Bye.